Sup guys, it's that time of the year again. PR7 is here. I'm gonna go over all of the new stuff that we got and give you my thoughts. I won't be reading out the stats line by line, but I'll leave the data mine in the description so you can check it out on your own time if you haven't already. There's quite a lot of information this time, so I've made summaries of what I deem to be important instead of only showing the data mine for this video. I'm going to start with the equipment this time because they have huge implications on the potential of the ships as well. So it wouldn't make sense to talk about Nakimo, for example, without discussing the new UR plane first. Starting off, we have the new UR plane, the LA9. It is by far the strongest plane against a single medium armor target. On a per strike basis, it is a 20% increase over the BF-109G, not accounting for its 20 extra aviation. Have fun getting over 2,000 plane plates to fully upgrade 6 of these bad boys. It is a bit slower though compared to the BF-109G, so there could potentially be situations where you can get an extra airstrike in a fight with the BF-109G that you can't with the LA9, meaning you can still find use for the BF-109G occasionally. In most cases though, the LA9 will be the new go-to against medium armor. It is also the best against heavy armor by quite a large margin, beating out two 1,000-pound bomb fighters like the Flying Flapjack by over 40% when accounting for the difference in aviation scaling. That is, bombs scaling to only 80% of the carrier's aviation. It is, however, weaker than the HVAR rockets against light armor though, so the plates that you have spent on HVAR, if any, will not go to waste just yet. Since it's Russian, you'll also be able to use it on Kearsarge to its full potential, unlike the BF-109G. Anyway, it will take quite a lot of time to get your hands on enough of these, so BF-109G will still be seeing some use for now. The next equipment that I want to talk about is the VIT-2. It's pretty straightforward, being a converging torpedo bomber. All we have to do is look at its cooldown and damage compared to the currently available options. It has the highest total damage and cooldown compared to the other three, making it the best damage option if cooldown is not a concern. Having slightly longer cooldown is also good for Implacable, for example, who tends to be a little too fast when sortied with Shinano and Haku, so giving her the VIT-2 while giving the other two Ryusei or JU-87s will lead to better timing. This is already 2 pieces of equipment that I'd want more than 5 pieces of, so we're off to a much better start than PR5 and PR6 combined already. Next up, I might as well finish up with the last new plane, the F8F Bearcat with Tiny Tim rockets. It's only equipable by select destroyers, aka just Halford, and aviation battleships. And for the ships that can only equip seaplanes, it is the best. Kearsarge can equip fighters, so it's only the best on her against heavy armor, as its modifiers are skewed toward heavy, being even better than the new LA9, only against heavy. It does have a pretty long cooldown though, so do pay attention to that. Also, you should still be using the Flying Pancake if you need its AoE or interception. Next, we move on to the new IJN Twin 410, which is an AP battleship gun. Its primary use will be for Musashi, as it is IJN and can fire 4 times with double shells comfortably in meta fights, without being too fast that it gets out of sync with other ships. It also only has 15 spread, which makes it dead accurate. It's not nearly as fast as the HE Purple Twin 410 Kai, so I hesitate to say that it would be a direct upgrade for campaign, and its per volley damage is also lower than that of the old prototype Triple 410 from PR1, but you'll want some spread reduction if you're using the Triple 410. I don't see myself using more than one of these, only on Musashi for now, as for any ship that isn't IJN locked, there are better options like the 457. Now, we get to the more useless stuff. The Triple 254 SAP Heavy Cruiser Gun is a bit too slow and weak to be worth using. It offers nothing over the Drake and Hindenburg guns, but if you're severely lacking in heavy cruiser guns in general, then you can use one as a stepping stone against anything that isn't light armor until you get the rainbow guns. But it's nothing special even compared to other SSR heavy cruiser guns. It's just the middle of the pack gold heavy cruiser gun with a slight heavy armor skew. Finally, we have the SAP 11152 light cruiser gun, which offers nothing over the Plymouth gun and is barely better than the twin 150 SKC from Gear Lab, and against medium armor only. I'd say it's safe to ignore this gun. Okay, with that out of the way, let's now talk about the new PR ships. First up is Nakimo, who is pretty damn impressive. At a quick glance, you should immediately notice that she has pretty much everything you would want in a carrier. Extremely high stats, efficiencies, flexibility in planes, significant buffs to all damage stats, a barrage, and debuffs. Seeing that she has all these incredible buffs is nice and all, but how much damage does it actually come out to in practice? Comparing her to the other DR carrier, Haku, I estimate that Nakimo is about tied with Haku against heavy armor, which is Haku's best armor type. Beats Haku against medium handily due to being able to sortie double LA9 in her first 2 slots, and then probably slightly loses to Haku against light armor because Haku has her absurdly strong dive bomber slot, which can take full advantage of the 81 Sky Raider. However, against light armor, you'd most likely be using neither of these carriers, and are better off using Kearsarge plus Yorktown compositions instead. One area where Haku does have her beat, though, is in the AoE department, as her fighter focus and barrage are all single target. But it's not like she's particularly bad against multiple enemies. Just not quite as good as Haku, splashing on everything with her 160% efficiency 10 rise. However, keep in mind that all these ballparks are assuming that they are both either revealed or concealed, but Nakimo's third skill also allows her to stay concealed more easily, and even gives her detection gauge a full reset if she takes enough damage. So odds are she'll be able to stay concealed for more airstrikes compared to Haku, and deal more damage as a result. So just in terms of damage, she's already quite incredible, but it doesn't just stop there. First, she applies a 60% slow to all enemies for 5 seconds after she launches her airstrike. This effect is already quite strong by itself, but there's more. If there are enemies that are already slowed by another Northern Parliament ship, they are routed for 2.5 seconds when the skill 1 goes off. Obvious choices for Northern Parliament slows include Soyuz and Shkolov with her Fate Simulation. Nakimo herself doesn't have any reload buffs, which makes it easy for her to strike after Soyuz and Shkolov without having to gimp her loadout in any sort of way. But notice that the effect takes place 1.5 seconds after her airstrike, so she can even go before Soyuz or Shkolov as long as she's not more than 1.5 seconds faster. In practice, what will happen is Soyuz or Shkolov will first apply their 40 or 50% slow for 1 second, then Nakimo will route them for 2.5 seconds, and after that 2.5 seconds route, they will still be slowed by 60% for another 2.5 seconds. Comparing this effect to Implacable's route, it looks arguably as potent. It takes 2 ships to get the effect, unlike Implacable, who can do it alone, but it's not as if sortieing Nakimo with Soyuz, which results in a 35% increase in Nakimo's damage, is a detriment by any means. There are also tons of slows from Northern Parliament Vanguard ships, including, but not limited to, Parmiat, Mercuria Retrofit, Voroshilov, and Talon. All of this is not even mentioning that she also applies damage taking increase, anti-air, and evasion debuffs to the enemy, all of which contribute to her total damage output significantly. She essentially has everything that make Haku and Implacable amazing combined into one, and then has amazing synergy with Soyuz, who is a Nagato tier buffer but pulls her own weight in terms of damage as well. The only thing I'd nitpick on is the fact that she is quite limited on reload buffs for 4-strike compositions in meta fights, but honestly, I think she'll make it work with 3 airstrikes given how powerful she is. Let's quickly also take a look at her barrage, which is quite simple, launching 5 planes with 2 aimed torpedo bombers each. These torps are different from the traditional torp bombers we're used to though, having much higher speed and a slightly bigger splash of 8 compared to the 3 of regular torpedoes. Perhaps this is the Azur lane implementation of the skip bombers that I've heard about. We can take a look at her in action in the research shipyard simulation and see that she drops what look like dive bombers but travel like very fast torpedo bombers, which is her barrage. These planes with camo patterns are the ones that carry them, and maybe someone can identify the exact plane. We can also see the new VIT-2 torpedo bomber as well, which she has equipped here. Okay, I think it's finally time to move on to the other ships. Next up is the other DR, Napoi. First and foremost, she's a tank. She has innate heavy armor, the same as A gear, but is actually way tankier than even A gear. In fact, she can take a Fumo radar with rudder and still be tankier than A gear with 2 defensive auxiliaries. Despite being a heavy cruiser, she only has 1 heavy cruiser gun mount, but 2 light cruiser gun mounts. Similar to Hindenburg, she can ignore shields, but unlike Hindenburg, she needs an enemy to be within 40 units of her, and her damage also doesn't seem to be anything special. Her skill 1 gives her a special secondary, but it isn't particularly strong. You can see its stats on the Barrage tab, and it's slightly weaker than Friedrich Karl's against light and medium, and much weaker against heavy. Her skill 2 deploys a smokescreen at the start of battle and every 20 seconds after. She also deploys a kind of personal smokescreen, which guarantees that at least she herself will gain 40% evasion rate for the entire duration. Now, the wording for this part makes it ambiguous, but by going into the simulation, we can see exactly how long the smoke lasts for. The first activation of it kinda happens before the timer kicks in, so let's fast forward to the second. At 9 minutes 38.5 seconds, the smoke activates, and then it keeps going until the timer hits 9 minutes and 32 seconds for a total of 6.5 seconds. 6.5 seconds uptime out of 20 seconds per activation is about 1/3 uptime. I'm assuming that while this little symbol is above her head, she's inside her special smoke. While she's in the special smoke, her secondaries gain 100% efficiency, which makes them 170% a third of the time, averaging out to about 100% efficiency throughout the battle. And then there is her all-out assaults, which is probably the worst part about her. First of all, it has SAP armor mods and only really deals real damage against medium armor, and still not much at that. Second of all, and really the primary concern here, is that despite her only having 1 main gun mount, it takes 8 shots of this gun in order to proc it. Normally, heavy cruisers with 2 main gun mounts like Bremerton take 8 shots to proc their all-out assaults, while heavy cruisers with 1 main gun mount like Prinz Eugen take 6 shots. Speaking of which, Prinz Eugen happens to have the same reload stat as Napoi. So I took a look at what the cooldown of the Hindenburg gun would be on my Prinz Eugen to get a ballpark of how long it would take Napoi to proc her all-out assault a single time. At 5.89 seconds after taking reload into account, plus 0.3 seconds of absolute cooldown and 0.5 seconds of volley time, we get 6.69 seconds per shot. 6.69 seconds multiplied by 8 shots is going to be 53.52 seconds for a single proc of this all-out assault. In other words, it pretty much doesn't exist. I really hope that they made a mistake here and do something about it, because it's quite sad if this is intended. I also think that they can give her secondaries slightly higher base efficiencies, because in her current state, I think her damage is simply lacking. Maybe just 100% base or something to help her a bit. She also has a torpedo barrage tied to her secondaries, but it's very weak, and she has low torpedo stat, so the scaling is poor. And the torps aren't homing, so it's nothing to write home about. To summarize, Napoi is the new tankiest ship in the game. She's quite lacking in utility, as her smoke is not as reliable as something like Brest's heal, and I actually prefer Anchorage's smoke as you can control its cooldown. Her damage is likely not going to be anything impressive, due to her not having any real barrages and a pretty mediocre loadout in terms of guns and efficiencies. But if she can just deal Drake level damage, she'll still be an impressive stat stick due to her bulk. Next, we move on to Dyson, who has a little bit of Vanguard healing, but is otherwise just a battleship with a barrage on fire. Since she heals, you would want to use her in mobbing stages, but her barrage is quite concentrated rather than AoE, so it conflicts with her identity as a mobbing ship. I'd probably just use her in for fun IJN boss fleets as an off-flag option, because I'd rather have big AoE barrages for my battleships and mobs with something like Izumo or Hood over a small heal. She's a very simple ship, so not much else to say. Next up is Halford. Other than the fact that she has a seaplane slot, she is really nothing special. No anti-air, anti-sub, or any sort of amazing fleet support, aside from a temporary evasion debuff and increased FP damage taken debuff. Unfortunately, 15-second buffs are notoriously hard to work with for main fleet ships, so it sounds a lot better than it is, and really it's only about as good as armor break anyway. Her damage should be quite good with the new F8F float plane equipped, as she gets a total of 4 of them from its skill. I'll just admit outright that I don't know how it will compare to other destroyers, and I'm too lazy to calc it, but I doubt she'll be overtaking Shimakaze against heavy armor, which is what her torpedoes and planes are skewed toward. Since she deals the most damage against heavy, I don't know why they gave her an FP damage debuff, but Mogador, who is primarily gun and firepower focused, a torpedo-based debuff. It just seems completely backwards, and now that it's in the game, it will most likely never be changed and will bother me forever. I really want to know what they're thinking when they're designing these skills. Just hire me already so I can save the game. Another thing that kind of annoys me is her max limit break perk, which is the 30% bonus aux stats instead of reduced shots for all-out assault. The only reason a destroyer would prefer the bonus stats is if they were focused on tanking and need the HP, or they were an anti-air or anti-sub carry. Since she's mostly just a damage dealer, the aux stats is completely wasted on her, especially since she splits her damage between torpedo and aviation, so you can't even go into Oxytorps and get the most out of the Torp stat. Why would Laffy 2, who is a tank who also carries anti-air and anti-sub, get reduced shot perk, while Halford, who has none of those things, get bonus aux stats? It just doesn't make sense. Please fix this and Janus as well. Actually, if they just give Janus the reduced shot perk, I don't even need them to change Halford and I'll be happy. In terms of her all-out assault, it's just the standard barrage with nothing special, so there's really no reason not to give her the reduced shot because it would be too strong or anything like that. Her potential will mostly hinge on whether or not her damage will be particularly good due to her plane slot, as she offers not much else. Finally, we have Bayard. She is essentially just a stat stick, a relatively tanky ship that deals pretty good damage via her balanced loadout and barrages. Kinda like a 2024 version of mains. While her barrages do have pretty good numbers, the simulation reveals that they go all over the place and she will most likely be relegated to mob fleet use only. She does have a tiny bit of fleet support in that she reduces the accuracy of all enemies when her HP falls below 50%, but I don't think that will significantly increase the survivability of your Vanguard as a result, nor do I think it's good enough to warrant using her over just a tankier ship who can deal more damage than her. Comparing her to Shimanto, who is the SSR light cruiser from the previous season, I don't see what she offers that is anywhere remotely as useful as Shimanto's anti-air and burn removal. Okay, that's all for the new PR ships. Before wrapping up, I want to quickly go over the unique augments as well. Centaur's is really simple. Giving her about 15% extra damage via a flat damage bonus, extra aviation from the augment's stats itself, and extra efficiency. She also gets 25 extra reload from the augment, which will allow her to get 4 airstrikes off easier in meta fights, so perhaps she will see a bit more use among HMS enthusiasts, but definitely won't be crawling back into what is considered the meta. Leipzig's augment is decent, but not enough to make her amazing. I do appreciate that they didn't make another chance-based barrage though. I hope this continues, and I'm sure the players, who will be using Leipzig anyway because they like her, will enjoy this very much, while I cry about Janus and Alan M. Sumner's 70% chance to proc barrages. And that's going to wrap up my breakdown of the PR7 update. Hope you found it informative and have fun grinding the ships. I will link my personal strategy on picking research projects in the description in case it's helpful for anyone. Thanks for watching and see you in the next video.